Emily Steele is a New York Times reporter. Last April, she and her colleague Michael Schmidt dropped a bombshell about then Fox News host Bill O'Reilly.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight.
Revealing payouts of more than $45 million to multiple women over sexual harassment allegations. O'Reilly denied the allegations, but Fox News dropped the conservative commentator from his juggernaut show.
If you don't like what's happening in the workplace, go to Human Resources or leave.
In December, Steele reported on a toxic work culture at Vice Media. 2 top executives were suspended. And just last week, Steele was part of a team from the New York Times awarded the Pulitzer Prize for Public Service. I met up with Emily Steele at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa on Wednesday. She was in Canada to talk about her reporting and how it helped trigger the Me Too movement. You know, I'm trying to think about what I would feel like as a 33-year-old who's won the Pulitzer.
I'm actually 34.
34.
You know, it's one of those things. As soon as I found out, I couldn't sleep for a number of days, just because since I was a very little girl, I always dreamed of becoming a journalist, and I've always really thought about these lofty ideals of journalism, of shining light on dark places and holding people in positions of power accountable and telling these stories that really help change the perspective of how people think about the world. And it's really just been a dream come true that I've been able to do that work, and then to receive the Pulitzer is really just, it was really special.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible moment.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's talk about some of the reporting then, and sort of the impact and how it started. And that's what I would, you know, as a reporter, obviously I have lots of questions about how you get these stories, and I think that's what people want to understand too.
Yeah.
So how did it first start to germinate? What was the first thing on the Bill O'Reilly story where you were like, we should look into this? How did that start?
The kind of seeds of this story really began way back in July of 2016. That's when Gretchen Carlson, the former Fox News anchor, sued Roger Ailes, the former head of Fox News, for sexual harassment. That story really burst into public view, the sexual harassment scandal at Fox News. And as a media reporter, we were just really chasing that story and just trying to keep up with this really wild and crazy competition of figuring out, was this an issue just at the top of the company, or was this something that was really pervasive throughout that entire organization? So we kept calling and calling and calling, and we started to see that there was a bigger story here, that there was a bigger problem.
So you were calling all these different people, but you were also calling them about a sensitive topic, a topic where they had maybe signed an agreement to not discuss it. So how did you get people to start telling you these stories?
It was hard, and one of the things that I keep thinking about now is that we were doing a lot of this reporting a full year before the Me Too movement really took off. And so this was a time when many women said that they had experienced this activity or this harassment or abuse, but they really feared coming forward with these stories.
It was a different culture.
It was it wasn't that long ago, but it was entirely different time. People feared that they wouldn't be believed. They feared that they would put their careers into jeopardy. They feared that that they would become targets because they were speaking out against this abuse. So that was a huge barrier and a huge hurdle that we faced. The other huge and significant barrier that we faced were these very ironclad confidentiality agreements. So what we did is some really kind of just old school boots on the ground reporting, and we called as many people as possible. We called as many people close to these women, as many lawyers, people who were at the company, people who have left the company, people who were in O'Reilly's world, to just try to piece together what this story was.
And you realized at what point that it was a pattern, that his behavior was a pattern and the company's resolution was a pattern?
One of the interesting things that we did is we went back, while we were kind of doing this reporting, one of our sources had said, it's just like the Catholic Church. It's just like the sexual abuse scandal in the Catholic Church. So we thought, let's go and look at the stories that the Boston Globe had covered back in 2002 about the sex abuse scandal within the Catholic Church. we pulled up all of those stories, and we actually watched the movie Spotlight, and because it was great just to see kind of how did they do this reporting? What was the strategy behind their reporting? What sort of lines did they use to try to get people to talk to them?
Hi. I'm Sasha Pfeiffer from the Boston Globe.
Did you have a conversation, though, at any point during the reporting about what this could mean?
Well,
or were you too deep in it at that point to understand?
That's what was so interesting. It was such intense reporting. We were so focused on following the facts and making sure that this was a fair and an accurate story that when the story published in April of last year, it published and then it just like exploded and set off this firestorm. And it's wild to think about, but it was right after the story published, there were protests outside of Fox News. Advertisers boycotted Bill O'Reilly's show. And you really can't underestimate how powerful he was in American media. People called him the king of cable news. The show was the top rated on all of cable news for 15 years. So this was this very powerful man. And so it was this kind of early moment that I think people really stood back and said, wait, this isn't just Fox News. This is a huge issue that our society hasn't confronted, that we haven't talked about. Yeah. And it was at that point that editors at the Times decided, let's continue to dig. Who are other powerful men that may have had these hidden stories? And so that's when my colleagues started to write about issues in Silicon Valley, in Hollywood, at the auto plant in Ford, and kind of the stories just kept on coming and coming and coming.
So that moment when you did finally go and meet him.
Yes.
So he had he lost his job at that point?
Yes.
Okay, because the timeline's hard for me
it's
to follow.
Little,
you know it so well that I don't.
It's a little.
So, but he finally agreed to talk to you on the record.
Right.
What was that like?
I was nervous. And we sat down for an interview, and it was kind of a very terse and tense 40 minutes. But it was also very important because it was all on the record, and we were giving him the chance to respond to all of our reporting.
Yeah, that's what balanced and fair reporting is.
Exactly.
Except at the end, he sort of loses it a little bit.
There was a point at the end of the reporting where we were kind of putting our folders, our papers into the bag and kind of ready to call an end to the interview. And O'Reilly kind of stands up at the end and he puts his hand on the table, and our recorders are still running. And so you can hear this on The Daily, which is the New York Times podcast.
Yes, which is where I heard it, yeah.
And basically he yells at us.
This is horrible. It's horrible what I went through. Horrible what my family went through. This is crap, and you know it. It's politically and financially motivated, and we can prove it with shocking information. But I'm not going to sit there in a courtroom for a year and a half and let my kids get beaten up every single day of their lives by a tabloid press who would sit there, and you know it.
And then you just left.
Yeah, so then we kind of shook the lawyer's hands. He didn't shake our hands at the end. He walked over to the window and just kind of stood looking out the window. And then Mike and I got on the elevator, and we were a little rattled and kind of went back and told our editors what happened and got the story into the paper.
How do you feel now that that part of the reporting is over? Because, you know, his career is done, he's done, these women have been given a voice. The truth has been exposed. How do you feel about all of that now, sort of that you've had a little bit of time to sit back?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really powerful to see the power of journalism. I think that this has been an extraordinary year for reporting and for following the facts. And I think what we've seen is that the truth does have a voice, that it's important to hold people in positions of power to account. It's important to look at the systems that have enabled that power structure to continue. And it's also really important to give a voice to people who have been silenced. And I think that that's just really incredible. And I just feel really grateful to have been able to do that work.
Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Thank
you must be very proud.
I am. Thank you. It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.